I think the story for us really was one of 2 or 3 years of substantial growth. Our market improved substantially, some very nice profit margins, huge growth in people, and then all of a sudden the train hit the buffers at about 100 miles an hour. So parts of our business saw their turnover drop by 70% within 1 year. So in one particular team we had 150 people, and 18 months later we had 50 people. So in doing all of that, there was a huge amount of shock. A lot of people, we had run the bull run, the same as everyone else, over the last 15 or 16 years. We had enjoyed literally those great times. And when we last had a problem, I was 30-year-old as opposed to rather embarrassingly close to 50 at the moment. So we had no one around at the time who had been through the last crisis. And of course, it doesn't matter how old you are, I don't think anyone has been through a crisis like this before. So for us, parts of our business were having some huge issues. Liz.
So what we decided to do was to, as Bryan said, run some workshops with our leaders across Europe, which amounted to about 300 people, so quite a size. And we branded the workshops Leading in Turbulent Times. So we created a half-a-day workshop, which Bryan, Richard, myself and our marketing director ran. We decided not to have external speakers, mainly because we probably couldn't afford it, but we decided to develop the material ourselves, and it was a combination really of all of our ideas, and it was principally around our firm, our market, our clients and our people. And what we wanted to do first of all was open the workshop with an exercise that took them out of their everyday environment. We were running it in the offices, so we wanted to make it feel different for them. So the first exercise we did was try to get them to think about how you sustain success in the long term. And we did this by playing them a video, which we created, of musical tributes to Madonna, ABBA and the Rolling Stones. And we got them to think about how these different artists had approached their careers, their success, over probably 30 years in some cases, if some of you remember some of the Rolling Stones things when they first started. So Madonna really about creating a style, constantly finding new ways of presenting herself to her market. The Rolling Stones, how they appeal to a wide range of people and constantly bringing in new fans. And ABBA, the way they just constantly do things, keep running CDs, DVDs, musicals, videos, etc. So they've really embraced change and kept moving on. And we wanted them to really think about that, rather than be like status quo, who really are what they say they are. They haven't changed, kept doing the same thing. So it was quite a nice way of bringing this to life for them. We wanted them to think about risk and how they embraced risk as part of the business. And we showed them, which was probably a fairly risky strategy at the time, a Tiger Woods campaign, which we didn't quite realise at the time how much risk he was undertaking. So it was really ironic that at that time it was happening. We looked at the changing face of our clients and what they now expected from us in today's world, and how they were affected by the recession. We looked at our values, and what was fascinating about it, our public values, those that are on our brand and our website and everything, our staff actually felt in these workshops that they were actually different. And as a direct result of the workshops, we came up with a completely different set of values, which we are actually now using, which was a very nice takeaway. We talked about our unique culture and the strengths of it, and reminded them about our culture. And again, the work that we used in the workshops, we've now embedded further in the business, so it was very useful. The nicest part for me, though, in the workshop was we talked a lot about the emergence of Generation Y and how they felt about the recession. We realised that our partners, our leaders, were managing Generation Y. And we started to really show them how they are wired completely differently to them, and that they needed to understand their behaviours in order to take them forward in these difficult times. And I think that really was a Paul on the road to Damascus moment. They suddenly realised, oh my goodness, I've got these people, and I understand now why they're doing what they're doing, and it's different to me. So that was, and now I think Generation Y has become a byword. So that was absolutely fascinating. I think now we know what we're talking about with Generation Y. We talked about the damage that we've probably done to the psychological contract, and how our people actually felt with their colleagues being made redundant, and how it endangered our culture. And then we talked to them about them, which was very difficult. We have a bunch of surveyors, that's what real estate is, and it's very difficult for them to talk about their feelings and how they're feeling at the moment, and we dealt with all of that. So I think what we had was a very interactive session. Lots of exercises. We used some some de Bono thinking, and we got a lot of black hats going on, and we now talk about that as well, so that's quite useful. So I think at the end of the day, we had a very interactive workshop. We've embedded quite a lot of it now into our culture, into the way that we do things on a day-to-day basis throughout the firm. And we did manage to deliver it to every one of our leaders across Europe in the business. Okay.
Just as we have very little time, it's actually easier to do a half-hour seminar on this subject than it is on 10 minutes or so, but really just to wrap up, bearing in mind we were asked to comment on a few bits and pieces. I think the impact we had at the time was on 2 or 3 different levels. The staff below leaders, i.e. the people who were not in the room, were really grateful for the fact that their managers were in a room with a whole load of others learning how to lead in various times. So I think that was on the shop floor, as it were. There was a lot of comfort that this was going on. Once you'd got a whole load of white middle-class males in a room to admit that they didn't know everything about everything, and it was okay not to have a stiff upper lip to admit that there are some issues, then I think the people in the room were delighted to be there and discuss it openly, knowing that no one actually knew the answer to everything, but there are a few guidelines. And I think actually one of the interesting things on the impact was on the UK board. No one I ever know has said that the CEO has the absolute monopoly on the right things to do and knows everything that goes on. And I think the board learnt a lot. We had some of our teams who were in absolute shock, paralysed by what was going on. Others sitting in a room a bit later said, I don't know what the problem is. We collect rents. We're now twice as important. We're much better than we were before. So there was a real balancing act between the two, and I think the board learned a lot about what was going on there. And it's actually, as Liz said, it wasn't just a one-hit wonder. It's something that we've now taken forward into 2010. There is life after 2009. And we're using this a lot for what we're doing and how we're taking the firm forward from now on. In terms of innovation, I've been at C&W for 28 years, and I had never seen or done anything like this in terms of helping managers manage. I don't think any of our competitors, to the best of our knowledge, undertook any of that either. And I think probably one of the interesting things, innovatively, was rather than stand up on stage and say, this is the solution, go and do it, we did the status quo bit, which said this is not acceptable, making no decision is the wrong thing to do. The first thing you must do is go and make some decisions. So we didn't tell them what to do, we simply told them that decisions are now having to be made. So I think it was innovative to let people reach their own conclusion rather than just tell them. And you may or may not be unusual to it, but I had never been in a conference workshop before where you walk in and Madonna is blaring out at you, and then you have the Rolling Stones, and then you have ABBA. Everyone's sitting there thinking, blimey, what on earth is going on? So it took them completely by surprise, and it got them into a completely different place mentally. So we started off from there. A couple of insights. I think we learnt a lot about each other. The board learnt a lot about each other. I think the managers and our partners learnt a lot about each other, being in the room, sharing responsibilities and things with each other. And I think we also learnt a lot about the staff, the people on the ground. So a horrible way to have to do it, but we all need to learn and move on. And I think there was an awful lot of learning from top to bottom and all of that. As Liz said, we brainstormed our values. We probably redefined them and came up with 3 words, open, personable and driven, which we now use all the time. Whereas before, you'd have probably had 53 different answers from 50 different people. Now everybody knows what it is we're striving for. And I think people have learnt a lot from that, and it's a hugely useful way of taking us forward. I'd like to do it again, but under different circumstances.